Did you know that about 14 African nations are still paying billions to France? Decades after independence. This hidden system has drained Africa's wealth for generations. Let's uncover the shocking truth behind it. French colonization in Africa shaped the continent in ways that still affect millions today. It started with control over land, resources, and people. But even after independence, the grip never fully loosened. This story isn't just about the past. It's about a system that continues to impact African nations in ways many don't realize. Imagine Africa, a land rich in resources. Then came France. They settled, they ruled for a long time, they controlled everything. This was colonization, a system where one country takes over another and keeps it under its control. Then the 1950s and 60s arrived. Whispers of independence grew louder. Nations fought to break free, agreements were signed. Flags changed, but the fine print, that's where things got tricky. Those papers kept strings attached, financial strings. You buy a new house, it's all yours. But somehow, you still have to pay the former owners every month. That's what these so-called independence agreements did. They weren't just about freedom. They were about control. Control over money, trade, and even military decisions. Then came the Colonial Pact. The Colonial Pact was a system designed to keep the money flowing. Not to Africa, but to France. New African nations were required to deposit most of their foreign reserves into France's central bank. That money wasn't fully theirs to use. If they wanted access, they had to ask. If they wanted to make financial decisions, France had the final say. This created a problem, a big one. One side held the wealth. The other side needed it. What looked like independence on the surface was really just a new form of control. Many say true independence never really came. It was more like a change in management. The numbers tell a clear story. Why do African nations still pay France? African nations send billions to France every year. Not as a loan, not as aid, but because of an old agreement that never really ended. This system forces countries to store most of their money in French banks, limiting what they can do with it. So how does this play out in real life? Imagine a country struggling to build hospitals. The funds are there, but they sit in a foreign treasury, out of reach. If the government wants to invest in roads, schools, or industries, they have to go through France first. And France? They have the power to say no. It's not just about money sitting in banks. It's about resources too. French companies get first access to Africa's wealth. Gold, oil, and uranium. The very things that could help African nations build strong economies. But under this system, African businesses often lose out. The best deals go to France, and local industries are left struggling. This isn't just about one or two countries. It affects nations across West and Central Africa, keeping them locked into an economic system where they generate wealth, but don't get to fully use it. The result? Slow development, struggling economies, and countries that remain dependent instead of thriving on their own terms. So, where does all that money go? Every year, billions leave Africa, straight to France. Not as loans or aid, but through a system designed to keep wealth flowing out. Even using their own money comes at a price. African nations must pay fees and interest just to access what should already belong to them. Imagine getting fired. But the company tells you that every time you get a new job, you still owe them a cut. Now, let's name the countries one by one. Senegal, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Benin, Togo, Guinea-Bissau, Chad, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, the Central African Republic, and the Republic of the Congo. If you look at their national budgets, you'll see a large chunk of it going straight to France. Now, imagine what could happen if they had control over that money. How many schools could be built? How many hospitals could be upgraded? How many businesses could thrive? The possibilities are endless. Some nations have tried to break free before, but the consequences were severe. Guinea was the first to resist in 1958, under President Ahmed Sékou Touré. He rejected the CFA franc, choosing full independence over continued French control. France retaliated immediately, withdrawing overnight, taking assets, and reportedly sabotaging their infrastructure. Guinea had to rebuild from almost nothing. Mali tried in 1962, creating its own currency, but by 1984, economic pressure forced it back into the CFA franc. It was not easy. Economic punishment and political pressure pushed many countries back in. Most stayed tied to the system because they had no choice. Now, a new movement is rising. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are working to leave the CFA franc. They want their own currency and full control. Chad and Senegal are rethinking their ties to France. The Ivory Coast removed French troops to take back control. These shifts show that the demand for economic independence is growing stronger. But the system is still in place, and it is still draining Africa. Experts say money leaves Africa faster than it returns. This creates a cycle of dependency. It blocks growth and keeps countries stuck. The numbers are public, and you can look them up. They show a clear truth. This system benefits France, and it keeps African nations struggling. Now, let's talk about the human cost. What this financial system means for everyday Africans. This isn't just about money moving from one country to another. It's about what's missing. It's about children sitting in overcrowded classrooms with no books. It's about hospitals running out of medicine. It's about roads that never get built, farms that can't expand, and businesses that will never grow. $500 billion. As some reports suggest, if that money stayed in Africa, the possibilities would be endless. More communities could have clean water, electricity, and modern infrastructure. Instead, people struggle. Not because Africa lacks resources, but because so much of its wealth is locked away, controlled by a system that doesn't work in its favor. Look at the impact. Young people leave their home countries, searching for opportunities they should have had right where they were born. Families work hard, but still can't get ahead. The cycle repeats, generation after generation, while billions sit untouched in foreign banks. To really understand the depth of this, compare the nations. Look at the quality of life in France versus many of these African nations. The gap is massive. It's not just about wealth, it's about opportunity, about dignity, about a future that is being shaped by decisions made outside of Africa. These aren't just statistics, these are real people, real lives, real futures being held back. This isn't a mistake. It was built this way. The system was designed to keep Africa dependent, ensuring that even resource-rich countries remain tied to decisions made outside their borders. Money flows out. Growth is slowed. Public services suffer. Industries can't compete. It's like a garden with fertile soil but no water, because it's being redirected elsewhere. France's influence doesn't just stop at money. It extends into politics, shaping leadership, policies, and decisions that affect millions. Countries using the CFA franc don't have full control over their currency. They rely on a system where France has the final say. That raises a serious question. How can a nation be truly independent if it doesn't control its own economy? And then there's the $500 billion number. Some say it's exaggerated. Others argue, it's actually much higher. But regardless of the exact amount, one thing is clear. African nations are paying a price for a system they didn't create. When I visited Cameroon in 2015, something about it felt familiar. Walking through parts of the country, I was reminded of my earliest years on a sharecropping farm in Arkansas, before my parents escaped during the Great Migration. I lived in a world where people worked from sunup to sundown, yet had little to show for it. One thing stood out to me in Cameroon. Many families didn't have indoor water. Just like in those early years in Arkansas. I saw people, especially women and children, walking to fetch water. And yet, every year, Billions of dollars leave Africa, while the people are hurting. Sitting in foreign banks, locked away under policies that keep African nations dependent. This isn't just an economic issue, this is history repeating itself. How is it that Africa, the richest continent in natural resources, remains poor? How is it that the countries that were robbed of their wealth, their people, and their future are still the ones paying the price?
It doesn't make sense.
Shouldn't France be paying Africa for centuries of exploitation? For the millions stolen through the transatlantic slave trade, scattered across Europe and the Americas? For the forced labor, the stolen land, the resources stripped away, leaving nations behind, in infrastructure, development, and opportunity? Instead, the roles are reversed, paying billions to France, not the other way around.
Why? Why?
How can these countries ever be truly independent if their wealth is still controlled from the outside? We strive to give the facts, to hold back our opinion, so that you can draw your own conclusions. But some things just don't add up. Somebody, anybody, everybody help me out in the comments. And make it make sense. That's a wrap, History Seekers. Getting to the roots is where history comes alive. We uncover the truth about Africa, African Americans, and American history. One story at a time. If this hits home, keep going. Watch more on our YouTube playlist. True History Exposed. Thanks for watching. Peace and love.